Chapter 71. Store Shenanigans. Summary. They finally entered the endless halls of IKEA. Time to enjoy the wonder of space IKEA. Now, Izuku has only been in IKEA proper a handful of times. Most of his experience with the store came from when his mom had an IKEA phase and would spend hours just browsing the store. This was before he was diagnosed, so he would get deposited in the play area while his mom did her thing. From what he remembered, it was always a good time. He'd mainly play heroes with the other kids or watch movies on the big screen. Eventually, his mom fell out of the routine of IKEA visits, especially after his diagnosis meant that they'd have to disclose his status if he wanted to play. Meaning it'd been quite a while since he's actually been in an IKEA. But if not for the clearly non-human people walking around and some odd styles of furniture, Izuku would have guessed he's somehow been transported back to Earth with how spot on this was. Though being transported through space might not have been too absurd of an idea with all the weird ball pit passage stuff. Seriously, that thing seemed to defy the laws of physics. While he was interested in the tunnels, he was glad to be in IKEA proper at last. It'd been a little awkward crawling out from under a desk surrounded by other people, but none of them paid their group a second glance. They'd emerged into an arrow-labeled hall twisting around a corner. Fake little room mock-ups sectioned off from the rest of the plain gray pathway. It seemed that they'd found their way into the kitchen area. "So, what now?" Dinky asks. Katsuki glares at him. "You're the one who wanted to come here, Sparky." "Yeah, but I didn't think about what we'd actually do when we got here." Ochako shook her head disappointedly, like their lack of IKEA etiquette somehow brought shame upon her. "We'll do what everyone does when they go to IKEA. Walk around looking at things, smell some candles, go places you aren't supposed to go. Forget how long you've been here, all until you reach the end and don't actually end up buying anything." That sounded pretty close to the couple later IKEA trips Izuku remembered. Except his mom always ended up getting at least one thing, even if it was just a little ice cube tray that made fish-shaped ice. Izuku knows chewing on ice is supposed to be bad for your teeth, but it was oddly satisfying to bite the heads off those little fishy ice cubes. Mina saddles up next to Ochako, slinging an arm around her shoulder. "Sounds good, babe. Lead the way." And that's exactly what they did. The 8 of them walked around every display. They sat at a dining room table and pretended to eat fake food laid out. Or in Denki's case, tried to eat it. He didn't get very far into the plasticky bread. Izuku was pretty sure both Earth and Space IQs used the same fake food supplier. They searched for more secret entrances, in cabinets, dishwashers, fridges, and ovens, only finding some chewed gum in a dishwasher and a fake baby in an oven. He didn't question it. Next, they moved on to the living room section. Off to the side, more fake rooms are set up, TVs playing some silent show in the background. In the center of the space they entered, there were couches spread out across the ground, and even sitting up on large shelves on the wall. As soon as they enter, Mei just stares at them with fervor. "I can't explain why, but I need to sit on one of those," she said, not taking her eyes off the highest couch. "I don't think it's allowed," Izuku mused, watching her walk towards her goal as if entranced. Kachan crossed his arms, watching her spider crawl. "Well, the gecko gloves worked." Up the wall. "Like that's ever stopped her before." Izuku looked around the stretch of path. There didn't seem to be any employees, so he guessed it was fine to let her lounge on the gremlin throne. Plus, he was more interested in what the TV was playing. He wondered if it was something from Earth or a space show. The room cutout was full of fake plants in the weirdest places. Izuku sat down on the couch, pushing aside the fake plant that had for some reason been sitting there. He looked at the TV for a minute, trying to parse out exactly what he was seeing. Ochako leaned on the back of the couch. "Watching the IKEA channel?" "The what?" She gestured to the TV. "Yeah, the IKEA channel. It shows off things like the restaurant in Smallland. If you stare long enough, you might start to see weird things." His eyes widened. "What kind of weird things?" She just smiled and walked away. Now that he thought about it, he didn't really need to know. He just got up, deciding to join Mei. Mina wasn't sure how long they'd been walking through Space IKEA. They tried to stick to the main path of projected arrows, but all it took was a glimpse of something interesting from one of the many shortcuts between sections for them to end up traveling a nonsensical route. Somehow, they'd ended up in a little miscellaneous section. Present among the various odds and ends was a cordoned-off nook labeled Caution, Gatara. Now, Mina couldn't read what that second word was, but caution had her intrigued. "Let's check this out," she said, dragging the closest person along with her. A cackle told her it was Mei. Perfect. An employee dressed in yellow stood in front of whatever contraband IKEA had. Their skin was coal black and had veins that looked like magma. The woman looked them up and down skeptically. "You sure your kids can handle this kind of thing?" Without hesitation, Mei said, "Of course." The magma sentient just rolled her eyes and stepped aside, letting the two girls check out the candles. That was what was so dangerous. There were a couple of low shelves full of candles, all with weird Swedish names, meaning their scents would only have to be deciphered by scent. Picking up a Lungar candle and bringing it to her nose, she asked the employee, "Why are the candles sectioned off?" before inhaling the light floral scent. The woman seemed to reappraise the pair, deciding they liked what they saw. "Most wussy species can't handle fire." "But candles are just little fire pets," Mina replied. The sentient made a clicking noise, rolling their eyes. "Something about the ingrained instinct to fear the living god of destruction that is fire, consuming all in its path indiscriminately and leaving nothing but ash behind." Mei smiled. "They really wouldn't like my flamethrower babies then." "I like your style, kid," the magma woman nodded. Mina left the two of them to discuss the various merits of fire and the sort, while she sniffed every candle in sight. By the end, she was definitely nose-blind, every breath containing the lingering aroma of way too many IKEA candles. Dinky's eyes light up when he at last spots what he's been searching for. He doesn't care if the aliens around them give him weird looks. He full-on dives into the bins containing his true loves. He rolled onto his back, snatching the nearest plush in his hands and holding it above him in triumph. "I have acquired a blahaj!" he declares to no one in particular. A parent quickly ushers their children away from the strange creature playing in the plushie bins. He hears the familiar voice of Ochako shout out, "Tungle Skorgs! Sweet!" before plunging into the bin next to him. Pyerpa trots over, tilting their head and poking the stuffies appraisingly. Good, another appreciator of their majesty. Katsuki gives the two submerged teens a disbelieving look. "Why are you two idiots so excited about a stuffed shark and bear?" Ochako gapes at him before shouting, "Attack the blasphemer!" and proceeding to throw Dungelskorgs at him. Denki doesn't hesitate to follow suit, pelting the shouting blonde with his Blahaj army. Pyerpa lets out a delighted chirp and quickly joins in their assault, eating stuffed random plushes with a smile. "You three are cleaning all of this up!" Katsuki yells as he retreats. Denki just smiles, like a cat that got the cream, and high-fives Ochako and Pyerpa. Katsuki frowned, watching as Fastel's tail dragged as they walked. They'd somehow found themselves in yet another kitchen section of the store, so they were making their way through until something interesting drew one of the idiot's attention. Katsuki slowed his pace to fall in step with the kid. "What's wrong?" He watched as they drew their arms around their middle and sighed. "I'm hungry." "Swedish meatball time?" Dinky excitedly questioned, coming up in between the pair. Deku hummed. "I could eat. Let's find a sign to see how close we are to the restaurant." Katsuki turned his gaze up, on the lookout for any bright blue signs, while Mina hummed. "Now that you mention it, I'm pretty hungry. Which is weird because I ate before we got here, and we haven't been here for that long, have we?" she said. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Mei fishing out some device, and Ochako tapping on her chin before speaking. IKEA is funny like that. We might have been here from anywhere between 10 minutes to 10 hours. Katsuki scoffed at the gross exaggeration. At most, they'd been in IKEA proper for an hour. Right? He tried to think back on everything they'd seen and done to parse out a rough timeline, but everything seemed to blur together. The endless hallways with twists and turns just seemed to clump in his mind. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to get a clear picture of their time. He heard Mei gasp. Including the time in the child prison? We've been here for 5 hours.
The fuck?
Katsuki barked out.
There's no way. Let me see that shit.
Mei didn't resist when he grabbed the tablet from her hands, but she was right. He remembered the time they left the ship perfectly, and the time blinking back at him was indeed 5 hours later.
Creepy, Denki grimaced. I vote we get our meatballs and leave.
Well, I do love IKEA, Ochako said. That's probably a good idea if we don't want to spend the rest of our lives wandering around here. A sign! Pyropa suddenly shouted. Katsuki followed their pointed finger, not to a small sign hanging from the ceiling, but to a massive blue slab that spanned an entire wall. Hundreds of little dots labeling each section blurred into a pattern of constellations. One was brightly colored red, the "You are here" dot. One nestled deep in the web and far from the exit.
Fuck!